Okay, so today Linka and I are going to talk about big data and privacy. Here's the outline that we're going to cover in today's presentation. We have 5 different topics here. And now, first of all, I'm going to talk about why big data is a big privacy issue. Big data analytics has the power to provide insights about people that are far and above what they know about themselves. And with great power there must also come great responsibility. In fairness, this problem existed before big data, but it wasn't a huge risk until big data analytics gave us the tools and techniques to be highly accurate with our prediction. Let's consider the DIKW pyramid. When most people talk about data privacy, their biggest concerns are actually with data, as it would be defined in the DIKW pyramid. For example, my social security number is probably sitting in multiple databases out there, and if one of those databases is breached, I will have a huge problem. The next level of the pyramid is information. This is where we start making actionable inferences about the data. When you are looking into understanding users' behaviors, this is going to freak people out even more. It gets worse. The next level up is knowledge, which is where you start connecting the dots from different areas of a user's life, such as their interests, shopping habits, political views, religious views, associates, and professional developments. The most sophisticated practitioners of big data analytics go all the way up the pyramid to wisdom, where this knowledge is tracked over time and curated into a very personal profile. Breach or not, most people will feel very uncomfortable knowing that someone or something knows that much about them. I consider this the biggest privacy issue faced by those practicing the dark arts of big data analytics. Next, top 5 reasons you should care about your privacy. The first one, everyone has something to hide, such as your address, your income, political leanings, attractions, and taste. Second, surveillance makes you act differently. You don't search for certain things because you don't want them to affect future search results or ads. You don't search for things because the NSA might see it. Third, they can find out more than you reveal. Everyone is collecting data about you, and when they share that data, they can infer things about you that you didn't make public, such as sexual orientation, political preference, etc. Visit one site, and sometimes 30 may be tracking you. The fourth, conditions may change. You may not care about companies knowing something about you now, but what about later? Maybe a hack exposes things about you and that could lead to identity theft. Maybe you contract a disease and suddenly you care if third parties know your past eating habits or drinking habits after a DUI. The fifth, your data is valuable. You should choose how it's used and have the right to be compensated. It's fine to exchange your data for free services, as long as you know what is being collected and have control over it, and also the right to end the agreement. Now, how to combine big data and privacy? I think responsible data management is key to combining big data and privacy. That is why it's so important to manage data carefully. With so many layers involved in data storage and analytics, a well-organized data management strategy is essential for making sure that data moves around efficiently and with minimal risk. Security monitoring and analytics tools are an important resource for helping to secure data. Of course, but they are only part of the solution. security tools on their own aren't a guarantee against privacy problems. To mitigate the risk of a breach, you need to keep your big data operations as lean and efficient as possible. Data integrates between different systems and formats should happen automatically in order to minimize the chance that a human error could create an attack opportunity. In order to keep your attack vector narrow, you should minimize the number of data analytics tools that you use. This requires a data management strategy that automatically converts data from the format in which it is born into a format that a solution. And you should strive to deliver data analytics results in real time so that you can discard data after it is no longer relevant, thereby minimizing the risk of the data being leaked. As we know that our lives and business are connected online, as more and more of our lives and business are connected online, the proportionality of the use of our information against us is also increasing. By strengthening your online security, you cannot reduce these risks at all. Anyhow, the gaps between the largest potential issues will be reduced. Therefore, we should try to use some tactics to reduce our risk of data privacy. So here are some essential tips to reduce data privacy risks of the data privacy in the current age IoT. The first one is change social media setting. Most of the social media sites like Facebook provide an option of showing the current location while uploading any post. If you are on a trip and your family members are alone, there is no need to upload photos with the current location. Under such a situation, you should change your location or upload these photos when you have reached home after completing your tour. Moreover, you can also restrict the current location to your friends only. The second one, automate security. In order to save your sensitive information from hackers, you should also use an automatic security system. This automatic security system takes an overview of the password, server, and firewall configuration from time to time. With the help of this automatic security, you can easily get an idea about the security of your information. Next one is secure transfer. For an organization, it's necessary to transfer the data from one organization to another. Before transferring the data, the organization should make sure that the website of the other organization is secure. If a website is using a SSL certificate, it means that it's a secure website. The reason for this is that the information must have passed through lots of computers before reaching the required destination. If a website is not using SSL certificates, it is not secure to transfer data to that website because the hackers can easily attack this website and can steal your private information. The last one is about identify threats. The security team of an organization should consist of expert persons, and these expert persons should remain alert at all times so that they can easily identify any suspicious network activities. After identifying the suspicious network activities, they should provide an effective plan to save their sensitive information from the hackers. Now, Lynka gonna tell us about big data and the future of privacy, and also new government regulations.
Thanks, Lily. So in addition to following the tips Lily talked about that you can take in order to reduce your privacy risks, I like to talk about the future of big data and consumer privacy more in terms of government regulations and what's already been talked about. So the first slide. In 2015, during President Obama's term, he helped introduce a draft of the Consumer Privacy Bill of Rights Act. And this was adapted from the blueprint they've been working on since 2012, which was also the year Twitter was put under criticism for selling their multi-billion tweet archive, which was thought to be deleted to data brokers. This bill had 5 major sections to it, which aimed to regulate businesses collecting consumer data, including security, by having businesses take responsibility for securing the consumer personal data, transparency, by giving consumers the right to know what data is already collected of them, transparency, by giving consumers access control by putting a limitation on how that data can be shared to third parties, making it harder for companies to sell that data. Consent by having an opt-in consent form that users can use to allow companies to collect their data. And lastly, accountability on the government's end to enforce these 4 measures. And unfortunately, this bill was still in the introduction stage in the Senate as President Obama's term ended, hence it can be considered practically dead. But after the Consumer Privacy Bill of Rights had died, California Congressman Ro Khanna introduced the Internet Bill of Rights in 2018. And this bill was very similar to the other Consumer Privacy Bill of Rights, but it closed some of the loopholes which critics talked about by making the language more precise. So the last one, it was up to the businesses to define many of the definitions, while this one defined it for them. It also received input from major companies such as Amazon and Apple in order to reduce some of the backlash it may have received. And this bill also didn't make it past the introduction stage, but it showcases how these discussions on big data and consumer privacy were already a topic being brought up to Congress on multiple occasions. Now moving on to something that has passed, this one, the California Consumer Privacy Act, was a bill that was passed on the state level in 2018 and went into effect this year on January 1st. This law makes it so that consumers can request what data is being collected on them, as well as demand that data to be deleted. So it's very similar to the 2 bills we've already talked about. It also gives consumers an opt-out option from companies collecting their data in the first place, as well as protection from any backlash they may receive, meaning companies wouldn't be able to deny you service or a product just because you opt out of their data collection service. And this new law isn't without its flaws either. Facing opposition from larger companies, a few amendments have been added since the original bill has passed. One of which is the fact that employee and job applicant data would not be considered as consumer data, meaning that data set, this law wouldn't apply to that data set of employee and job applicant data. And I believe this amendment was set for 1 year, and it could be renewed after the fact. In addition, another flaw is that it's tedious for consumers as they have to go to each company site individually in order to make this request, whether it be requesting what data is collected on them, to delete it, or to opt out of their form. And following California's lead, 8 other states, which are listed here, including New York but not New Jersey, have introduced their own data security laws, 7 of which have are already in committee waiting for a decision. And the funny thing is, in response to this, over 50 CEOs of major tech companies such as Amazon, AT&T, Dell, and Visa MasterCard have sent an open letter to Congress asking for a federal data privacy law, because it would be a nightmare to comply with 50 different state regulations instead of one federal one. And that's it on government regulations. And now I'd like to talk about another view regarding data privacy. As we keep using technology and more data is created, it may be more practical to have companies who specialize in collecting data collect it and then regulate how they handle the data and its privacy instead of getting all these companies, researchers, and the government to stop collecting data in the first place. So ACXIOM is a company with one of the world's largest commercial databases on consumers, as it collects, combines, and analyzes consumer data from places such as public records, surveys and questionnaires, web browsing, social media posts, and retail purchases. As one of the world's largest data brokers, they've run into the issue of data privacy, and they have this whole segment on ethical data usage and their rigorous assessment on the fine line between what's too private or not. But once again, these guidelines are decided by a small portion of the company's leaders, which lead to the issue of human subjectivity, since what one person thinks is too private may be just fine to another person. And this company follows several regulations, including some of which we're familiar with, such as HIPAA and HITRUST, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and the Health Information Trust Alliance, which focus on information security in the health sector, the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, for the science and tech industries, and the PCI SSC, which is the Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council, which focus on payment security, whether it be online or in card purchases. And lastly, I'd like to talk about something more recent regarding the coronavirus. In April, there was a paper hearing for the paper called Enlisting Big Data in the Fight Against Coronavirus. In this hearing, they recognized the importance of using big data to combat COVID-19, while at the same time examining what would happen to this data at the end of the pandemic. So it called for things such as the need for transparency on how the data is being collected and used, user consent on what is being collected and the right to know what is being collected about them, how this data is being made anonymous when possible, and limitations to how this data can be used, so combating COVID-19, and specifying an end date, so which would mean when the pandemic is over, this data should not be allowed to be used. The paper also talked about stricter regulations on private company accountability, such as the company Kinsa, which uses their smart thermometer to track fever outbreaks throughout the nation. Okay. And to wrap things up, so these are our works cited pages focusing on big data and privacy, and thank you for listening.